I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. Our esteemed guest today is a good friend of mine, fellow 30 under 30 and past podcast guest, Lucy Feicht. How are you, Lucy?
I'm good, Kyle. I'm so excited to be here again.
You are one of the originals in the first 5 episodes. I mean, like, such a humble beginning for us. And thank you for supporting us then. Thank you for supporting us now. Thank you for listening all the way through. I know you're a huge, avid listener of the podcast. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, you bet. I know. I feel like the pleasure is really all mine. I am the biggest fan of the podcast. So to be on it a second time really feels like I'm fangirling right now.
Well, it's a mutual admiration society, and here's why. For those of you that don't know Lucy, and go check out that original episode in our first 5 episodes, Lucy operates Lou Realty Group out of St. Louis, Missouri. And Lucy has been a realtor and broker owner now and grown her company since our original episode that we had with her from 5 people now to 17. And as a broker owner myself, as a leader, that's a big deal. We have had people come and people go within our company, within the brokerage at Calibrate Real Estate. And we've kind of been hovering around 10 people. And 10 people, I had a mentor say this to me, that's kind of danger zone, because you're not like a really small team and you're not quite big enough to have a bunch of layers of leadership and all of these, organizational chart. And so how have you grown? The first question I have for you, Lucy, is how have you grown from 5 to 17? And in your words, you said it's the right size. So what makes it the right size for you? And gosh, you've got to be having fun right now as you're operating this great company.
Yeah, you know what? Our growth, and this is like such an easy question for me to answer, like whenever I think of growth at Lou Realty Group, because it has really happened so organically. We are intentional about nearly everything we do and everyone we surround ourselves with. But the one thing really that we, in terms of our biggest focus, not just with our clients, is actually really not farming for agents or for growth for that matter, as far as, we are hyper focused on our clients, our transactions, and really just getting as a well-oiled machine. And our brand has been a dire importance to us from the get-go. So we are constantly evolving that, and really truthfully, organically, it's just kind of happened that, we've attracted kind of like-kind people and like-minded people. And so with that has just became the growth. And, it's been very, very, I shouldn't say easily, but it's been very well maintained and sustained. Everyone at Lou Realty Group is so excited to be there. Everyone at Lou Realty Group really believes in our mission and our vision and our goals. And, so that makes it so easy, to be able to have what we have now and continuously maintain that. And I think with that, just like I said, organically becomes growth.
As a leader, that growth, I think a lot of us will at some point maybe downplay our involvement in that growth. And I could hear a little bit of that in there. So I'm going to ask you to actually take your humble hat off and say, that organic growth, yes, it is organic and it's the right people coming to you and being attracted to you. But in our first episode, you shared that you are not bashful at all about branding yourself. You'll put your logo on pretty much anything, apparel, you're giving it to people. So what are some of the really concrete and tangible things that you think you've done from a branding standpoint to not only attract clients, but to attract realtors and to grow the way that you have? Because I think you are a very good marketer. I think you're a very good brand. And I think that there are people out there that can learn some lessons from you about how to brand themselves and to be courageous, because I think branding yourself and actually putting yourself out there is an act of courage. So what are some of the things that you do at Lou Realty Group and things that you are really spearheading that you feel like have helped you grow?
Yeah, and the branding aspect of it too has been, as I mentioned, so important to us. We have kind of developed this notion that we are very, very passionate about our city. We are all born, raised in St. Louis, and we say never leaving, St. Louis. And we've really built a brand around our city itself. So a lot of people kind of equate Lou Realty Group to myself, being Lucy, or I go by Lou, to my family and friends. But Lou Realty Group has far more meaning than just that, as far as it's, St. Louis, welcome to the Lou. We've actually, since we last spoke, then we had our first mural probably when I was on the podcast. But so we have a big welcome to the Lou St. Louis mural on our building that's like well known. People come take pictures of it. It's on Instagram, it's on social media. We have a detached garage at the office. So our office is kind of set up as, well, it's a residential space. It used to be before I converted it to commercial. And so on the garage now, we just had a new mural painted maybe about a year ago now or so that says, "You can find me in St. Louis." So people have had so much fun with it. We nearly do everything in front of it. We created a brand video about a year ago now or so that kind of focused around just St. Louis and who we were. And it got so much attention, when our mission itself really too is also, when the first thing that people think about when they think of St. Louis is they think of Lou Realty Group, whether that be they're thinking about real estate or not, they're thinking about us. So that has been, building a brand around that has had magnitude for me. And with that, I think comes those that lack or have the same passion as us, whether it be for St. Louis or real estate, is that it's an easy brand to get behind because it meshes the two so well together. So we're not just here to be, realtors in St. Louis, but we're really kind of brand ambassadors to our city, involved in our communities, involved in, anything St. Louis related, from food to people to communities to neighborhoods. So it also makes it really easy to sell real estate in St. Louis.
I love that. The mural I can think of. So Courtney and I, right before the pandemic, we were very fortunate to get back. We went to Florida, and there's this awesome restaurant, great food, great beer, great atmosphere. And it was on the beach, not literally like on the sand, but literally right across the boardwalk in Clearwater Beach, which is where we were staying. And I can remember the name of it. It's called Bad Fins. And if anybody's ever been to Bad Fins, but it's really cool because right outside of the actual in-person restaurant area, it's a little fast casual place. It's not super fancy, but the food and the beers were great. They've got this huge mural that says "Welcome to Clearwater Beach" or whatever. And then they've got these like little emojis that you can do. And it feels like you're at like a wedding or you're like on the red carpet, and everybody's and I did the same thing. Snap photos of us, our kids are taking photos of Courtney and I and putting it on social media. And it's like free advertising. It's so smart. I love that you have that. And it's something that I aspire. I've actually was thinking about this, and I forgot that you did this, but I was envisioning that. I'm like, at some point we're going to own our own office. It's going to be on a great corridor here in Denver. It's going to be "Welcome to Denver," or like "This is Denver," or whatever that mural will be. And I love that it's so smart. How did you come up with that? Did you commission an artist? I mean, I think that I'm just so interested in that.
Yeah. So you're exactly. We commissioned a local St. Louis artist who's also a client of ours. He's painted both now, and he's just extremely talented. I mean, we even and around that too. So when we first had the first mural, it got so much attraction. It's beautiful. You might have seen it before, but you'll have to check out both now. And the garage door one is really neat. And so once we had it completed, what was important for us to be local, and it also was awesome that he was a client. But we then we went on to like our local television, our Show Me St. Louis, a few different outlets, and just kind of talked about it too. So that just created so much awareness about it. The hashtag itself, now it's not so much us reaching out to make sure people know about it. It's that we are getting notified as soon as somebody's like tagging it or, hashtagging it on social media or tagging us. And it's not just real estate related, but it starts a conversation for us regardless. And it's on every billboard that we complete. It's on every marketing piece material. So it really is a part of us. And when we think about when our brick and mortar becomes maybe, we hate to think about it, but maybe too small for us, we still plan to carry that through. And really where the idea came from, Gosh, I think it was probably one of those things that we all were masterminding together. And, and actually too, whenever we visited Denver to meet you for the first time, this was now probably 3 or 4 years ago, Denver's filled with them. And it's kind of like a good inspiration, but especially just the generation that we are in right now, being so visually focused as well. I think 10 years ago, would people begin painting murals on the side of their brick buildings? I don't know. But now, it's kind of a little bit of a trend that's certainly catched on in different neighborhoods in St. Louis. But the neighborhood that we sell a lot in, which is just St. Louis City and right out of the city to the county, an urban development, a lot going on, new restaurants, coffee shops, things of that nature. The whole just mentality and community and neighborhood connects with something like that. So it was really important to us that we found a platform like that to do so.
It's such an important thing to do as a real estate agent, to get out of your own market and see what's working in other markets. And that's what I love about our 30 under 30 alumni group and our reunions, is that it is so fun to come to Denver and see like, oh my gosh, I could implement that there. I remember someone that was very important to the growth of my career would go to New York or go to different areas. And when they were on vacation or exploring some other area of the United States, they would go to other real estate offices and just kind of like check out ideas. And it's a great way to, and you're not copying, you're making it into your own thing, but it's a great way for inspiration. I was just on on a podcast interview earlier with a designer, and she was sharing that with Pinterest and with Instagram, and you had shared with just the visual aspects of our society, there are so many opportunities for inspiration. And I think that for someone who's trying to like get their career kickstarted, or maybe they're in a funk, maybe they've been quarantined and their city or their area has been super locked down, there are areas in our world now that you can get inspiration without ever having to go there. But that is something I have learned. Anytime I go somewhere, I try to just kind of see what's going on with the real estate landscape, because there's great inspiration ideas. And I think as we talk about your growth, quite literally within your company, but then also within your family, you and Billy are expecting a baby later this fall. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll have to get more advice than just real estate from you now.
You know what, as my wife will give you better advice than I can. But
I'm sure
Courtney and I,
Courtney would be great.
yeah, having 3 kiddos that are all in elementary school, I will say that it is so much fun to welcome that first baby. And you had shared with me, and I don't know why I didn't realize this, but as a 30 under 30, you just kind of assume everybody, once they get the accolade, and I was one that I got it the very last year I was eligible, you just kind of figure people are over the age of 30. But you mentioned that you had your birthday this year, you turned 30, and then just shortly before that, you were pregnant. And so like, you've got all these major things going on. 30 years old, you're operating a company. You've obviously been nationally recognized by Realtor Magazine, and now you're going to be starting this family. And I like to say, and I shared this with one of my teammates as I was giving them an award at the beginning of this year when we did our annual awards ceremony, that they were pregnant. And I was like, you are not only productive in business, productive on the home front. And like, and she was like, wow, reproductive, and it was just funny. What are some things that you're naturally thinking about as a female, as a to-be mother, and you've got this team that you're leading? You've obviously got a family that you're growing, you and Billy, and we've had this pandemic this past spring. So, you turn 30 in February, and then March, you find out that, or maybe I got that backwards, February and March, you've got this kind of experience. And the question here is like, okay, like I'm going to be a little bit more tired. We have more limits to things going on. And you shared with me that you were really proud of all the things that you've seen in your own business, of really being focused on being a part of the solution. And that phrase is something I have shared with my own children multiple times. I'm like, something's going wrong, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. You can't fix the problem necessarily from happening in the first place. Sometimes you can, but the problem happened, like, let's be a part of the solution. And so what are some things that you've seen in your own local market, within your own company, and just natural thoughts as an expectant mother and an expectant parent, of what this pandemic has done and how you have been a part of the solution?
Yeah, sure. And I think, when we were kind of talking earlier than this too, is that, we are from, if we think from, we're in, first part of July now, when we think when March came, and really kind of the pandemic hit, I think with the Midwest, it seems like we always get everything kind of last, so we were almost in this situation where we had like a crash course to begin, preparing for what changes could be made. And I can remember the most initial conversation that we were having, was exactly that. How we have to ensure that we are part of the solution and not contributing to the problem. Whether it be, there were so many conversations going on in terms of, transaction wise, how this was going to be affecting our real estate market. How was it going to be affecting here and now and in 6 months? And what does that look like? And what we were so proud of, and I think it kind of puts them in perspective, because if there's two people probably less prepared for parenthood, it's Billy and I. And very, very excited. But we looked at each other, halfway through that, and was thinking, I know we feel so unprepared for this, for parenthood and what that's going to look like. But I think we've tackled some bigger things too. I mean, we've both started businesses, we're managing them, and we work together every day. So I think we'll be okay. But beyond that, with the pandemic and having the conversations we had, the Realty Group just came together so quickly in terms of identifying solutions, whether it be for showings, for closings. We were not going to allow the excuse of a pandemic, or any crisis for that matter, stand in our way of getting our clients' goals met, ensuring that everything was running as seamlessly as possible. It was not just important for our own mindsets and sanity, but that we were keeping our clients in check as well. And I think out of the last maybe 90 or 120 days now, it seems like, I think maybe 2 of our transactions fell victim, to the pandemic and to COVID, which is extremely impressive. And the fact that we were able to sustain and continue and grow business during the time was awesome as well. We, a few things too, I think a lot of conversations began having were, how are we going to stay busy? How are we going to keep up with where we're currently at? I think everybody else could manage something that maybe people think they can see coming, or, this hit everybody with like no moment's notice. So that was hard for a lot of people to reflect and adjust to. And so I think in a lot of those times we reminded each other, this is where the strong, will hold up, that we are going to be united, not divided, and then, fall victim to not being able to stay in this type of business when we have things like this scale back. So that was a lot of our conversations leading. We were working on a lot of solutions. Just going back to some of like the branding things too, we had some signs made, during the pandemic that were contributing to like just respect and appreciation to our heroes, which were our first responders and our healthcare workers. And they were just yard signs, and they had our information on it in terms of, I think we had our mural and us behind it, just like providing the support, and it was just a conversation starter, if anything, checking in on our clients to see how they were doing. And where we're at now in the market wise too, we've almost seen a little bit of a speed up for those that, were taking advantage of our interest rates or what have you. So business certainly hadn't suffered while there was a lot of other suffering going on in our world, in our community. And I think that was a good light for a lot of people. So as we kind of navigate the rest of the year, we've taken a lot of this time for planning purposes as well, myself included. I was on this track of like from February, when we found out we were expecting, to this October kind of end date. I was like, okay, this is great. I've got this 9 to 10 months of all this planning I'm going to be doing. And I've really been able to kind of hyper focus on that too. So that has been great. So to say I'm blessed for the pandemic, I know is like, not appropriate to say, but with any sort of crisis, it certainly brought out a lot of the leadership, and a lot of, those that are strong-willed will last, and so that has been huge for us.
It's a great reminder too of what's important, and something that you shared with me, which I so aspire to do, just because I love lake life. You're actually at the lake right now, at your lake house, and as we're recording this, and those are like, that's the fun stuff, right? I mean, that's why you go to work. It's why you strive. It's why you have late nights, early mornings, is so that you can enjoy yourself and you can have this little slice of heaven. And let's talk about just some of the reflections you've had as you're preparing for what maternity leave might look like. And that's something that you had asked me about. You're like, what's that kind of like? And I was like, I'm a guy, like, obviously I spent some time, but very different, recovery wise and all that for the lady that's actually delivering. And so as you've been reflecting upon some different things, what are some things that have kind of come out positively out of this quarantine and out of this time as you're expecting? Because I think it's really important to share that there are some people who are really down right now and they feel like there's no business to be had. And I have had a conversation with you. I also had a conversation with another 30 under 30 from California where they're like, we are having an amazing year and you need to be getting out there and getting to work. So what are some things that you've been thinking about? What are some reflections on the actual market right now and some things that are working to generate business during this time of a lot of uncertainty and change and people are concerned? And what are some things that you're seeing, Lucy?
Well, and I think it's most important too for agents and for us, for instance, is that the conversations that we're having right now, are going to be reflecting as to where we're at in the next 6 months or a year from now, and navigating through that, being a resource, primarily for our clients to answer those questions, but also get back to what the goals are, because life is going to go on, life is still going to happen today, tomorrow, and in the next 2 years. So people need a roof over their head, and that doesn't matter if we're in a pandemic or not. So I think sustaining, looking at that conversations that people are having now, knowing that they have to be had, no matter if it's not listing in the next 2 weeks or searching for the home in the next 2 months, those conversations are actively being had. It's more important now than ever to be really just kind of creating those like more committed relationships. So we have really kind of structured, work related with that as well. So like, for instance, when we taking on buyer consultations and listing consultations, we are very, very kind of well oiled with that. How we conduct it doesn't matter if you're first time home buyer, you've done this 4 different times, first time seller, we conduct all of them the same. It's important for us now, we encourage those, hey, even if we're postponing or pausing the search or the sale, we're still conducting our consults ahead of time. We're putting them under, an agency relationship, ensuring that they utilize us as a resource at their disposal, for the next. So we, in the last probably 2 weeks or so, I think we have probably taken on maybe even 7 to 10 new listing contracts that have, a 2-year time frame, so, and people are comfortable with that. They want to have a relationship like that, a commitment to know that the resource is there for them. So whether it's not a sale in the next 30 days, but it's a sale in the next 3 years, that's still important to us. And I think ultimately too, people having the discouragement, based solely upon an emotional reality versus an actual reality, for people that are, hey, I'm going to pause because I don't know where we're going to be in maybe 6 months to a year. That's been a very important conversation for us to like navigate seamlessly. So we have talked a lot about what that conversation looks like, because nobody's going to be able to promise somebody tomorrow or, in the next 6 months for that matter. So really kind of getting behind the reason that we're so passionate about real estate. And it's the few words that I have said probably so many times, and it's the most proven investment. It's not something that we're, I think for the first 30 days of our pandemic, when everybody saw their 401ks probably get cut in half, they're thinking, well, I'm going to maybe scale back on a piece of real estate purchase right now. And so, that has been, we've been kind of scripting those conversations, ensuring that, we're getting the people the information that they need and that they want. So I think that has been probably the biggest game changer for us, is how we're planning for future business right now and sustaining what we have. I mean, our specific market has, really kind of a lack of inventory that you'll hear, across the nation, I feel like. But, real estate to me is a cyclical, like I said, anything else. We could have market conditions change overnight, an influx of inventory, a reduction of. And so 2 weeks ago, I was in a position where we listed a property that had 84 showings in 2 days. It had 13 offers on it, escalated well above asking price. And that was a really common notion for both our sellers and our buyers. And that in itself got the conversation going for people that this is the time to do it. This is the time to sell, or this is the time to buy. So I think just being transparent with clients and agents has been very important to educate people. And that has sustained us for sure.
Wow, you brought up 2 really good points that I want to accentuate. The first is just because someone's not ready to sell right now doesn't mean you can't get your listing paperwork done today. And I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of newer agents make, that you say, well, I'm just going to wait. And it's like, well, if they're ready to sign with you, create a plan that says, we'll probably bring it out to market. That could be in the fall of this year for next year.
Mhm.
And your price might adjust and you might have benchmarks in there, but you can start signing business even though someone's not technically ready to actually have that sign in the yard. So that's the first thing that I love that you said. And the second thing that I really enjoy hearing from you is that you're having all of these conversations, all these thought planning, and you're being very intentional. And I think naturally, if you're pregnant, if you're expecting male or female, that's something that sort of forces that discussion, right? You're like, okay, we've got, this doesn't happen by surprise. We've got 9 months to plan for this. And further, it's like Christmas comes on the 25th of December every year. We can plan for Christmas, even though people like race around. And I think that planning and being intentional is really very important. And I can see that in you. So I'm going to ask you to flip this question. Are you nervous? Are you worried? Are you contemplating maternity leave, any of those types of things as a business owner? Because, you've had the ability in your 20s to be the throttle. You're like, I can work more. I can be a part of it. I can help people. I can mentor them. But now, physically, you're going to go through some changes, and you're also, as a first-time mom, going to want to experience some of these things. And I can think of someone very important in my life that just had a baby and is an independent contractor and self-employed. And so what are some of the things you're thinking about as you've had all this production, and then you're going to have this period of time where things are going to slow down? Are you nervous at all? Are you worried? And kind of what are some things going on in your mindset right now as you prepare for that?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Nervous or worried has not been an ounce of what I've been feeling for the last, I'm just like, I guess I'm a little over 6 months as of Friday. And, I am so excited. Like I am so excited for not, just my child bringing, our first child into this world, but, and I couldn't be more excited bringing him into this world. I think I've seen so many negative things about, just the world that we live in today and, everything else that's going on. And, I couldn't be more excited to show, our first child, like everything this world has to offer. And really too, I almost feel like once and we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. So I like, people are like, what, you cannot call it an it. And I'm like, what else can I call it? And so the baby, I'm thinking like, I just can't wait to show it all the things that we've done, we have, where we're going. And it almost feels like a catalyst to this bigger movement for me. It doesn't make me feel like I'm about to scale back at all. It makes me feel like I'm going to be leaping forward. One thing I think for sure in the last 6 months and where I'm at now is that, like you mentioned, being very intentional. Like my day wasn't just intentional prior to pregnancy. And now with it, I didn't even realize I had another level to get to. I take apart like one thing that I'm working on each week that I'm getting very scheduled, for when we kind of introduce this new life in this new world. And, I want to be so prepared for it. And so, to say how I'm feeling is that I just feel like all this level of excitement, like I'm about to bring on a new team member. I'm like, it'll just be more hands to help, right? Yeah, when I think about maternity leave too, it's like the one thing I haven't thought about, the one thing I haven't planned for. And so I think to myself, well, as soon as I can get adjusted on like a sleep schedule, and I'll be back in the office. Like I just won't be physically there for maybe a week or two, but I'll mentally be there too. So I know that that's going to be a rude awakening for me. So I'm prepared for that. But yeah, right now, I think as these next 3 months happen for me, I'm just getting very hyper focused on putting a lot of things in place so that and I've got such a good partner with me. Billy is incredible. It has to be like one of the neatest people I learned so much from him every day. And in the last 4 months that we found out we were pregnant, we also kind of hit another personal goal of ours to open up a laundromat. And so he has like spearheaded this project in the wake of the pandemic and everything else that had to go into play. And it seemed like to a lot of people, we were just like adding something else to our plate. And for us, it felt like we were more organized than ever now. So I'm hoping that we continue with that same momentum. And like I said, when we think about adding this new member to our group, it feels like such a catalyst for something more. So we're excited.
What a great perspective. And I enjoy that you say, adding another team member, because I remember something that you shared with me in our original episode is just that you love branding everything. You'll put your logo anywhere, and you shared, you're like, I even got a pair of underwear for Billy that had Lou Realty Group on them, and I can see the onesies. You may already do that, but I can see the Lou Realty Group onesies. Our buddy that's a 30 under 30, Koki Adasi, has Koki Sold My Crib, and he sells those, or not sells them, he gives them to all of his clients when he sells a house. So I like that. There's an really old fashioned saying that you want to get something done, you find a productive mom, especially around like an elementary school. Like, go find the productive multitasking moms. And you're right. It is going to be something that I think will even accelerate. You'll have obviously purpose, but you'll also be looking at this like, we got another mouth to feed. This is something that's exciting. And what a great perspective. I will say sleep is, oh my gosh, that is such a precious resource. And if you have any family around you, one of the things that we did, and it was out of a dramatic necessity, out of desperation. Courtney remembers this more vividly than I do. She just remembers that we asked both of our moms, can you just come over? This is when the twins were born, our second pregnancy. We had Charlotte as first, and then Amelia and Henry as the twins. And she was just like, we just need someone to come over one night a week just to give us some time so we can sleep and just kind of watch the babies and change them. And that was such a game changer for us. And so if there's one little nugget of advice, is just finding that person that you trust and that you can feel, not anxious about being able to get a good night's sleep, because that is hard. That's the hardest.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. I feel like I'm like training, like it's like a marathon I'm on right now. I'm like training myself to be like, because I'm up in the middle of the night, not in the perfect night's sleep as I used to be, but
Yeah.
I'm an early person as it is. And I know how big of an adjustment that's going to be. And I say I know, but I know I've never been in the situation. So like I said, it feels like I'm training for this marathon. Like, I'm reading things about it, knowing how to get out, and it's like, you can be as prepared as you think you are, but you won't be until it's here and you know what you're going through.
And that's a life in real estate sales too. I mean, you think you can prepare yourself and plan, but until, pardon the war analogy, but until those bullets are flying, until, the pitches, if you're thinking about baseball, about your St. Louis Cardinals, until those pitches are live, it doesn't, you cannot manufacture. You can only go through so many scripts before, like, hey, we need some live practice here. And so parenting is absolutely like that. It's like, let's just have this go. And both you and Billy are going to be great. And I feel really honored as a husband that you shared the thoughts that you did about Billy, because that is such an important thing. Having a great partner, a great spouse that really supports you in your endeavors, I think is just absolutely critical to success. And there's all sorts of studies. You can go and find them on people that don't get divorced and are committed to each other and committed to the success of their relationship. They end up accomplishing way more. And it's just wonderful. So I'm excited for you guys. I really am.
Thank you. We're so excited.
We've got a couple of final questions that we ask as we near the end of our show. And I've asked this to you before, but I think it may have a different theme as you're an expectant mom and as you've gone through the things that we have, and being a part of the solution in this pandemic and really leading and growing a great company, this organic growth. I'm so excited to hear your answer. So it's this concept of Dear Younger Me. Comes from a song by the band Mercy Me. And I have dubbed it personally, this isn't in the song, but I've just dubbed it as the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. You've just eclipsed 30. And so you've lived some life, you've built a business, you've got some things going on. And as you reflect upon what people might be able to do to be successful, someone comes to you and maybe they're a member of your team, or they just, maybe they're a family member and they're like, Lucy is just doing so well. She's got all these things that I aspire to do in the next 10 years. If you met someone in their early 20s, what advice would you give to someone in their early 20s, Lucy?
I love this question. This is like my most favorite question you ask people, and I love to hear the answer. But I never think about what my own answer would be, But I think, one thing that, and Billy, going back to Billy, I mean, I know I probably sound like I just met the guy, but I am, he's always giving me so many like little tidbits of advice or momentum. And, he's always like, don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me what you want to do, or show me what you're going to do. And I take that into so much, so much seriousness I provide to that, because every time you think about it, you're thinking in yourself, like for me, I'm driving the car, I'm like dreaming up all these things. And, then I get out of the car and I go to the next thing, do they come to fruition or do they not? And, even from when I'm having conversations with friends or family or clients about what I'm going to provide, whether that be as simple as a follow-up or a phone call or a report that I'm going to get out. I mean, that is so important, that I'm intentional, that I'm going to not just tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. And, for especially when we think about, our child or dear younger me. And, I think that keeping just your head down, work hard and focus will never fail you. If you're going to constantly tell me what you want to do and these dreams and these goals that you aspire, but we all know that person that is such a dreamer, but not a doer, and so it's been important to me to really delay the gratification of something, is that sure, celebrating our successes and our wins are super important, but delaying the gratification that you've done something great, you want to, expose that or talk about it, but you've got to keep going, that success is not going to just happen overnight. It's going to take a long duration of it. And that from planning to executing, I think, had I been 22 and said, hey, these are all the things that you need to be, very intentional with, from your day to your planning to your organizing, where I wake up at 5 a.m. now as a 30-year-old and where I was waking up as a 22-year-old are night and day. And so that, I think, is so important to me. And oftentimes I have people, that you want direction, you want, I do, you want advice from people. And, the other day I heard somebody say something along the lines of, don't ask another guy about your future, make your own. And so that to me is super important. Billy and I are very independent people. We were independent before we met, and here we are now, and just what we can accomplish together was far more than we could have achieved individually. So recognizing that and is like, has been such a game changer for us. And I just hope that, whether it be our child or 22-year-old, that I could see that there's a lot more out there for me to learn from people and from experiences. And that alone has been the biggest growth for me.
It's amazing advice. And a lot of people will say, okay, well, yeah, I've heard actions speak louder than words, but what I have experienced, and it's, some of the fallout of this pandemic, is that we've had a handful of people, literally 5 brokers, leave our small boutique this spring. And that was hard for me as a leader. And there would be a lot of discussions. I mean, we'd have some exit interviews and people would say some nice things. And I was constantly reminded of, well, your feet, where they're walking, is really what is showing what matters to you. And at this time, in the coronavirus pandemic, as we're kind of coming out of that a little bit this summer, and we'll see how it all develops later this year, but people are very much evaluating and trying to understand exactly what is important in their life right now. And if they leave, if they go somewhere, if they do something, whatever those actions are after this problem really shows what's important to them. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it's probably more evident and more in our face right now of just what's really important. And you really do see it through people's actions. The final question that I'll ask you, Lucy, and I didn't ask you this last time because it's a new question, and it was the answer from our guest in episode number 5. So just shortly after you, I interviewed a guy named Chris Oakley. Chris is my career coach for a number of years. Chris, unfortunately, very tragically passed away this last year. But his answer to that question, that Dear Younger Me question, was that he was in a mentoring group in his 20s. A leadership development group. A bunch of guys would get together, and there were some older guys, and one of the exercises was they had to actually read this book called The Principle of the Path by Andy Stanley. And in that book, there's this exercise within the book where you have to write your own obituary. And it's this, think of, the end, keep the end in mind, start with the end in mind. If you think about something that's been told by many people. So if you were thinking about what someone might say if they were delivering your eulogy, if they were writing your obituary, what would you want to be known for? What would you want people to remember you by as something that Lucy really lived out in her life?
Yeah, and I've had Chris Oakley's name written down a number of times because I love how you've talked about him so much in so many different podcasts, and you learn so much from him, and having a mentor like that is incredible. And so when this question started happening or started asking people, I loved hearing the response. And again, I never asked myself that. So now that I get the question asked, I think two things for me that I admire a lot, and many qualities of people that I look up to, is that I'd love to be looked at as the hardest working individual somebody knew, with the most humble mindset, that provided the most grace for people, that, how you made somebody feel, and that, versus, what you did for a transaction or for, whatever it might be, that how I made somebody feel was a clear reflection of who I was as a person, as far as giving people grace or giving people gratitude, being thankful for everything, whether it be a failure or a success. That just really kind of having a humble mindset with it, is that from the day I was born to the day I exit this world, that I'd never stop such a hardworking mentality. That is extremely important to me, and I hope it's reflected here and now. But even as life goes on, I hope that speaks true and true.
Lucy, that is beautiful. And it reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote. If someone's never heard this before, I hope it blesses them in some way. Maya Angelou is credited for saying, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I agree with that. And I believe that as a leader, that is really, we are here to guide people to their next destination. And we don't know how much time we have with them. It could be 2 years. Someone's working with your company. It could be 20 years. And we hope that there are some of those that are committed and long lasting. A great way to end our show. Before we go, Lucy, how do people check out Lou Realty Group? Where do you want them to find you on social, and where do they get to know Lou Realty Group? And of course, if you've got referrals coming from anywhere in the United States to St. Louis, think of Lucy and think of Lou Realty Group. How do they find you?
Sure. So really kind of our Instagram, our social media, and our website's the easiest place to check us out. You'll immediately see our vibe and our tone, but our website is just Lou Realty Group, but the group is abbreviated. So LouRealtyGRP.com. Our social media, our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram, all the same thing. So it'll be real easy, I promise.
Well, blow up their website, everybody. Find Lou Realty Group, find that mural, obviously everything they're doing out there on social media. Lucy Feicht, thank you so much, friend. It's been such a great opportunity, even though it's digitally. We wish that we could see each other in person. It's not going to happen this year for our reunion. It's just, and that's something that we're kind of working through. Everybody is, of all these different things that are just being canceled. But I have really enjoyed getting to know you and Billy in person. I'm so thankful that you are a huge advocate and fan of our podcast, and that you share that out with all of your teammates at Lou Realty Group. So for Billy, who I saw cruising around in the background there, for our esteemed guest, Lucy, for our podcast producer, Kayla Davis, I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. And as I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.